Hello and welcome to another edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Right off the bat on the old show today, some possible sad news involving this particular automobile, Subaru's BRZ, as there's a lot of rumblings floating around the old interwebs saying that possibly the little get-together, the hookup, if you will, between Subaru and Toyota, that honeymoon, may be over, and the love child that came out of this being the BRZ FRS GT86 models coming from those particular brands. Apparently, Toyota's brand new beau, sorry for this analogy, being BMW, that Toyota and BMW have been working together on a brand new sports car, which apparently may be going forward on the GT86 platform, which may end up leaving someone out in the cold, which quite possibly could be Subaru. Apparently, possibly the BRZ may be dead only after a handful, well, maybe a couple of more years. We'll have to wait and see what comes of this in the future, but a very interesting situation moving forward, especially because I know that Toyota did a lot of the development, but I know that the engine is absolutely Subaru in this particular model, so we'll have to wait and see what actually comes of this. I would love to see Subaru move forward with this particular model, and maybe we finally get an STI version of one of these things. But we'll have to wait and see what comes of this in the future. Next up on the list, another interesting situation. Could Ferrari possibly be going to make an entry-level model of the 458? That's another rumor that's been floating around the interwebs over the past several days. And a very interesting little situation. Apparently, Ferrari is mulling over the option of making a less expensive 458 Italia. As the standard 458 Italia, and the biggest difference, at least, between these two vehicles is going to be the power plant itself. And the power plant for the standard 458, obviously in the 4.5, is a 4.5 liter, normally aspirated V8, putting out 562 brake horsepower and 398 pounds-feet of torque. Apparently, this new entry-level model, which is yet to be named, don't know if they're going to keep the 458 moniker on this vehicle, but it will be built on the exact same platform. It may look absolutely identical. Will have a 2.9-liter twin turbocharged V6, supposedly still making close to 500 brake horsepower and 440 pounds-feet of torque. Now, they're talking about this being an inexpensive model, but there's already talk that the new entry-level, or the V6, Turbo V6, 458, is going to cost over $200,000, so it's not exactly going to be cheap. The real interesting thing, or at least in my mind, is would you buy an entry-level Ferrari? I mean, I guess when Lamborghini came out with the Gallardo, that thing sold like hotcakes. And it was the best-selling Lamborghini of all time. So possibly this could work very, very well. But to me, Turbo V6 versus the V8, I don't really think it would be that much of a difference, especially if the horsepower is really, really close. So don't know what's exactly going on with Ferrari right here at this point. And this could be just a lot of junk floating around the old interwebs as well. But we'll keep you in tune if something else comes of this particular deal. Last up on the list of the Supplier folks over at Valeo. Valeo makes a whole ton of stuff in the Supplier realm. And some of the pair of interesting things that have just come out this week are very intriguing when it comes to, I don't know, me geeking out over weird little items over the interweb, especially little parts of automobiles that could be coming very, very soon. The first thing from Valeo is they're apparently working on a brand new 48-volt hybrid system, but instead of using batteries to run it, they're using ultracapacitors. Now, if you've just watched the recently concluded 24 Hours of Le Mans, you heard a lot of talk about capacitors versus batteries. Now, capacitors are very small. They can hold a lot more energy, and their power density is a lot more. Actually, they can hold less power, but their power density is more as far as creating more power. Now, a battery can hold a lot more power, but its power density is quite small as far as producing power. So there's the give and take from this particular situation. So these ultracapacitors that Valeo is working with, on the biggest side of it, is going to be a way less expensive hybrid technology setup. Especially the fact they're talking about that the average setup costs around $3,000 US to actually have a hybrid setup in a vehicle. Valeo is claiming that their new system is going to be half that cost. So very interesting times when it comes to hybrids moving forward. This may be in a lot of new vehicles coming soon. Another interesting little situation, also on the electric front, coming from the folks over at Valeo, is another 48 volt setup, but this is an electric supercharger. Yes, you heard me right. The same supercharger that would be mounted on the top of a gasoline engine. They're going to make this out of electricity, or at least power it with electricity. There's an inherent issue when you actually develop forced induction. The biggest issue is heat. But one of the most interesting things is it robs power instantly off of the engine. A supercharger actually can take as much as 100 brake horsepower to actually turn the supercharger to actually get it to get any effect. Same thing with a turbocharger setup. That's why there's a lot of spool up that needs to be done, because the exhaust gases have to be forced through the turbochargers to get them to spin quick enough for them to finally spool up on their own. So it's an interesting situation. There's no free lunches when it comes to this deal. But supposedly this new electric supercharger can be packaged almost anywhere on the automobile. It doesn't have to be mounted to the car itself, or at least not to the engine itself. So you can mount it wherever you want. Now obviously you're still going to have to go around the heat, that is. And if you can mount it somewhere else, that could eliminate some of the heat, but it's still going to have to go through an intercooler to make a lot more of a dense charge, which is easily burned and easily making of horsepower. Now, real word on where Valeo wants to go with this electric supercharger, whether they want to go the horsepower front or the fuel economy front. But it's an interesting setup. Supposedly it'll work on gasoline and diesel setups. So it's a very interesting deal moving forward. And supposedly they've already got a major manufacturer on board and is going to build a front-wheel drive variant of this in the next couple of years. So hopefully we'll know a whole lot more about this soon. In fact, there's also a little rumblings that quite possibly it's going to be in a Pikes Peak hill climb automobile that's going to be going up the Pikes Peak Hill in a handful of days, actually in an Acura NSX. And the place where I found this, which was Autoline.tv, actually said that they are thinking that quite possibly the new hybrid powertrain that could be a little bit more hybrid than you may think of the new NSX could be in that NSX, the old style NSX going up the Pikes Peak Hill. But we'll know a lot more about this hopefully in the future. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. And I'm very sorry for getting way too internal geek details on those deals, but that's who I am. You can subscribe to the channel if you want to at any time and get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Also, in the show notes, you can find the Facebook page and check out and see what all we do over there as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.